Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for October 15, 2015. Reading the special order calendar, decision items. Item number 1, 34041 BZ, 7209 Main Street, Queens.
Okay. So with this one, we had asked them to update the plans to show the planting specified, which they did actually. The parking spaces dimensioned. There's now a total of 4 awaiting service and a site plan that shows the traffic movement. They were also supposed to clarify whether the signs comply, and they kind of did, but then if you look at photographs, there's still those paper signs. So in checking the signage calculations, they're way under on the amount of signs they're allowed to have. So even if the paper signs are so-called temporary signs, they have it looks like they have a lot of area where they could still have those, but they did take away lots of the junky signs, they said. And then there's a request, though. We had asked them to re-stucco the sidewalls, and including there's this kind of strange window on the side of the building that they were going to close up and then stucco it continuously. They need to also repair a leaning wall for which they need a permit. So they've asked us to condition approval on doing that work. So normally we would like to have the work done in advance, but because they need a permit, and they seem like they're very responsive with some applicants, so I think, is everybody okay with that?
Yes. And even just the photos show that even with just painting the wall gray, it looks so much better.
Yeah, much
so
better.
They're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, they definitely were spiffing it up.
Yes.
But the wall is kind of raw,
Yes.
So okay, great.
Item number 2, 6995 BZ, 111B, 11th Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, so they provided a letter from the engineer stating that all the safety systems are in order, and they also provided a fire department sign-off letter for an E-alarm system at Chelsea Piers, but it's not a specified area, and Chelsea Piers is a gigantic place. The notes on the drawings were updated to reflect that the systems have been installed. So my response is, if the fire department is okay with the materials, then I'm okay with it. So maybe we wait to hear from Mr. Scaduto tomorrow. Okay.
Item number 3, 14696 BZ, 557 Broadway, Manhattan.
Okay. So this one, we had asked them to provide us with a letter of conditions, and they were actually supposed to give us one this morning. So, okay, so we should be getting one today. They are willing to limit the amount of illumination, and they were clarifying the degree of limitation, and we just still haven't gotten that letter. But I assume we'll have it today, so that tomorrow we can discuss it really briefly. And then they're also, of course, willing to limit the amount of square footage on per establishment. The limitation that they're suggesting, though, is only limitations to 10,000 square feet on establishments that are regulated by the zoning resolution. So there are some that are not regulated. I don't know how many of those would actually be marketable in Soho area. One thing they did say, though, was limitation of 10,000 square feet of floor area, as opposed to, say, including cellar space. So I don't know if you want to say total amount of area, of floor space for limitation, or just floor area, because we didn't see anything about the cellar in this application.
Well, how would the Department of Buildings interpret that if it was cellar space?
Cellar space is not zoning floor area except for medical offices.
So wouldn't they include that if they're calculating a 10,000 square foot store?
No,
they wouldn't. They would just
never.
calculate the 10,000 square feet.
The target in Riverdale
marketing
is
area.
completely below grade and in M1, and that's how they're able to exist there.
Yeah.
If you know that
Well,
store, you
I
guys
do.
do.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
I
exactly how they're there. So they
Yeah.
don't count. They could have a
Right.
I would say floor space then.
Floor
I would
space, that's what
include
I think.
Cellar space.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I think that's what the intention is.
Right, that's the intention, that's part of what the community concern was.
Right.
I think it's right to do that, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Continued hearing items, item number 4, 182, 183, 95BZ, 2465, and 2473 Broadway, Manhattan.
This one, they requested a 3-week adjournment.
New cases, item number 5, 699 46BZ, 22401 North Conduit Avenue, Queens.
Okay, so I'm just going by photos, and I assume other commissioners have seen the site. So the photos show barbed wire on fencing and debris and a disabled trailer on the site, all of which should be removed. The planting is overgrown and unkempt. There's no sign of that any ameliorative work has taken place. And I think consistent with what we've been doing, we should see a cleanup now. There's also a chain link fence with barbed wire that was supposed to have been replaced with black aluminum, which wasn't done. The site is directly adjacent to residential use, so it should be kept clean and free of debris anyway, but it's worse if it's adjacent to residential. I'm a little confused about the status of construction. Has any work taken place at all? I didn't get that impression.
No,
But-
work has taken
okay.
place.
And I had a question for them concerning, they said that they're being delayed at the DOB, but it doesn't appear that they've had a plan exam since 2012.
Okay.
So I'm wondering what exactly is holding them up, if they haven't been back to the building department. They filed for some foundation and curb work, but, you know, it seems that they should be able to move along a little faster.
Okay, and maybe if something's holding them up that we could help with, where a phone call might help move along the application process, it could be that it's stuck at DOB and maybe a call from us will
Stick them.
quick start it. I don't know. So, and then the only other thing was from the prior resolutions, there was a condition that no towing operations take place here, so that would be a continued condition.
Well, I visited the site yesterday, and that rear area with the chain link fence and the barbed wire, it looks like it's a contractor storage yard with scaffolding. And I know the last time we heard this case, we had asked, that was where they were doing the towing operation. And we asked them to clean that up and get that out of there, but they've just replaced it with something else.
Yeah.
So they should really, remove the barbed wire. And it's in a residential neighborhood, it's right next to a home. It is in very poor condition.
Okay, so the site needs major cleanup and clarification on the use of that area that's restricted by the fence. And it has to be a use that's approved, that's related to the approval. It can't be contractor storage or...
Right.
Okay.
Item number 6, 20262BZ, 950 Allerton Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay. The land use map shows this is adjacent to a multiple dwelling, but the statement of fact states that it's adjacent to a site on the east is an office building. On the west is mixed residential and commercial, so I'm not really sure what's right. The map shows commercial uses across the street from the site along Allerton and a bit on Williamsbridge. So it seems like the use is still an appropriate use in this neighborhood because there's a lot of commercial. The recent photos also show debris on the site, miscellaneous signage that should be removed, and shabby vegetation that needs to be cleaned up and replanted. We need a photo also showing, always in these applications, we need a photo showing the adjacent property taken from the street and also from inside the site so that you can understand what the perimeter conditions are and how the buffering is working. So, and also there should have been perimeter planting along Paulding and Williamsbridge, which doesn't look like there is from the photos. The drawing should specify the number and type of plantings. That's kind of a constant with these. My question is, there's a fenced-in area behind the store. I don't know really what it's for. It should be labeled.
It should be parking, but it's actually parking any which what way and storage of any kind of thing from machinery to garbage. there's a dumpster, there's also what looks like it's a shed, that's a storage shed, but I'm not quite sure what the use is. And they should put that in their statement of facts and findings and discuss the storage shed, and discuss legalizing the storage shed.
And
Right.
in general, it was at least when I was there, it was very, very active and really crowded.
Active and crowded with a lot of cars, you mean?
Cars, and I assume then if they've got all of this stuff sort of in the back there, there isn't maybe enough maneuverability space for people to move in and off of the site.
Well-
I had a hard time getting onto the site just to
Right, but
get gas.
the back lot is completely cut off from the
I know,
site.
but it's supposed
Yeah.
to be, at least on their plan, they've showed that they've got sort of this open area back here. I don't know whether
Yeah.
or not it's actually supposed to be used for, any maneuvering of cars or anything like that.
There's no way to get in.
You can't access
It's
the
too-
building
yeah, it's
at
too-
all.
yeah.
It's like, just like a
dead
accessory
space
storage
area.
yard
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Okay, so they need to clarify that, discuss it on the statement of facts, and it has to be cleaned up. And
It's a
also,
shame, it's just this big open space.
yeah. There's also a middle curb cut on both Allerton and northernmost curb cut on Williamsbridge, and I don't really see what they're for. They just seem to be there. In one application, we had a middle curb cut, and there was an explanation that it's actually used in some way, but I don't understand how. It's right in front of the pumps. So, okay.
That one?
Yeah, you see in the middle?
This guy. This one here?
Yeah, there's a middle curb cut. Yeah, there's a northernmost one there and a middle one.
I think.
Okay.
And then I had a
No, there's this middle one and then the northernmost one. I don't know. I can't see the middle one.
I have some other questions too.
Okay.
It looked to me that they had added some things. They added 2 sheds in the back area, one against the building and one where the landscaping's supposed to be. They added a vacuum and an air machine along Paulding Avenue property line. They added 2 donation bins and a car wash and another
And the
air
car
machine
wash.
adjacent to the building. Those were not on the approved plans. And they have a lot of excess signage, banners, flags, everything.
Okay. So they should speak specifically about the addition of all of those things to the plans.
Right.
And about how they accommodate, a rush of cars. How's their operation?
Okay. And then the other thing I said, the parking spaces need to be numbered on the plans. The other thing is, they made a comment that the signage on Allerton exceeds the allowable, and that, that was what was there in the prior BSA approval, but BSA doesn't grant variances on signs unless you ask. So, and you need to make a case for a variance for signs. So I think what they need to do is clarify the signage calculations, and if necessary, they need to reduce them on Allerton, redirect them the other way. Some part of it is that most of the signs are illuminated, and maybe they could take the illumination away from some of them, and that would eliminate the problem, because I think they have enough area for non-illuminated. Yeah. Okay.
Item number 7, 13292 BZ, 3948 Amboy Road, Staten Island.
Okay, so this one, there were a lot of statements submitted that talked about board approval history, so in the end, because there were so many, I got confused, but it's easy enough to figure it out because there's the board decision, so ultimately we can figure it out. But in the process of so many ways of explaining, the proposed hours of operation are confusing.
Right.
Are they the same as what's shown on the C of O? The statement of facts has actually 2 sets of hours in it. I always find that so surprising, The site looks clean in the photos anyway, but the fencing of the parking area is really poor chain link with plastic slats, plus open chain link at gates and razor wire. I think the quality of the fencing should be improved. I'd like to know what everybody else thinks about that.
They should also talk about the use of that parking lot, because there was a tent when I passed. So they've got some outdoor events that must be going on in that parking lot.
And it obstructs.
And that should not be, because they're right next door to a residence.
Right, and it obstructs about 50% of the
Yeah.
parking spaces, this tent.
So it's somewhat
It's like,
permanent.
it's an entertainment tent, you know,
Yeah,
like,
it looks like an outdoor event
yeah.
tent.
Interesting. Okay, it's like a little banquet hall, an outdoor
Something
banquet hall.
Like, yeah, if
that,
you wanted an outdoor party.
I was wondering if the parking lot was open for the office and retail uses, because, you know, I have the feeling that it's, you know, solely used by the banquet hall. And there's also a curb cut at the front facing Amboy Road, but as they've stated, there's no parking in the front of the site, so they should remove that curb cut.
Okay. And then,
They had some, I think they need to clarify their signage, because they've got some signs actually up on like a stanchion. It's like I guess it's an identifier of the whole strip, but it seems that they've got some sort of identification on that, and I'm not sure whether that's included in their calculation.
so what is it? It's a sign on a stanchion?
Yeah, it's on the sidewalk.
It's
Oh,
like
on
it's
the
the
sidewalk.
catering
It's like a-
sign?
yeah.
Catering sign.
Yeah.
Oh, that little thing. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's no sign for the caterer
Right.
really in the front, so they
Mhm.
put it on
It's like
they have a couple on
yeah,
a
like
pole.
Yeah,
a
little-
stanchion kind of sign.
On the sidewalk. That's one of those come this way signs, those allure signs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They used to be the sandwich board guys, and it was replaced by.
By the just now pole with the sign on it.
Right, okay. Also, so are you talking, when I was asking about what's the fenced-in area in the parking area, which isn't shown on the plans, that's what you're talking about, the tented area. The plans just show it as a nice, clean parking area, but then the
Right.
photographs show this fenced-in area.
Right, which
Right.
is the parking area, which is the party area.
Okay. Okay, and then, let's see, specify, we also needed, again, a photo of the adjacent property from inside the site, looking at the perimeter, and from outside the site, so we can understand the relationship to the residential property. Again, the trees on the inside of the property look good, but the other vegetation looks shabby. And this planting type and number should be specified on the plans and installed where they're not already there. Anybody else?
Item number 8 for 2705 BC, 13347 39th Avenue, Queens.
Okay. The statement of facts contains a statement about the ECB violation for parking 12 cars without a C of O. I don't understand, I was confused by that. You can't use the space for parking unless you have a C of O for it, so it's illegal parking. So if, it seems to me, what they're trying to do is they have a site, it's not being used, they're waiting to be financed, it's taking a long time. Not sure that it's going to happen as quickly as they think, but what they're trying to do is make money from the site, but they don't have a permit for it, so that's an illegal use of the site. So you should apply, file an alt-1, take care of that unless construction is going to start literally, the day after our determination, assuming it's positive.
Either that or just discontinue the use.
Yeah, they should discontinue the use until,
I was there yesterday, there were no cars parked
okay.
on the site.
that's good. It wasn't like a holiday or anything. Okay, so they shouldn't be using it, okay. And they also need to show payment of the ECB penalties. We can't approve anything that has open file penalties. I didn't have any other problems with this though. Anybody else?
Item number 9, 9708 BC, 84 Sanford Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, this one is a sad one. The first request I have is that for the hearing tomorrow, I'd like to have someone there from the school who is knowledgeable about the status of construction and the filing work, and also about the building's current occupancy. So It's not useful if we don't have a person there who really knows about the building instead of kind of, I don't know, maybe we'll find out, like that. The statement of fact states that the fire department is awaiting our approval before reviewing the Schedule A. I'm not really sure I understand that. I'm not sure I'm thinking of the same Schedule A. Is Schedule A I identify with is the occupancy schedule that goes to the C of O. So I don't really know why the fire department would be waiting, but we'll get clarification on what the fire department needs from us prior to a decision to review all of the fire safety issues, because this building has some fairly terrifying violations, and it's occupied as a school. There are children in there, and so I really need to hear from the fire department and ultimately from DOB that they are comfortable with how these violations have been cured or addressed or whatever. I'm a little confused, or really a lot confused, about the vacate order and its partial lift. Both still appear on the BIS website. So it's, though I do see that printout from, which talks about the disposition of the vacate order being partially rescinded, but I don't really understand that. So if it's partially rescinded, which part isn't rescinded? That really needs to be clarified. And yeah, it's very confusing. Was the vacate order only for the cellar and the first floor? Or was it for the whole building? It seems like it was for only the first floor and the cellar.
Can I just say something? During the prior case, they had done some indoor air quality testing, and they had found volatile organic compounds. During that hearing, while it was in session, since they couldn't remediate the issue, they installed a sub-slab depressurization system and a whole additional, because they already had kids in the cellar, all day long, and we were very concerned about that. So they installed this sub-slab depressurization system, fans, and they were going to operate the cellar at a positive pressure to make sure all the gases were evacuated. Mm-hmm. So they came back and they retested the indoor air quality, and when they had the system running, everything was okay.
Okay.
So I would like to know if that system's running. And, one of the violations had to do with, they called in the Department of Health, et cetera, and I recall that they were even supposed to have a pressure alarm, that if the system wasn't running, an alarm was going to go off, and they were supposed to get the kids out, and they were supposed to do annual testing. Now, when I read the resolution, all of this is not stated in the resolution.
Right.
But I would like them to do indoor air quality testing now, because according to my notes, it was supposed to be done on an annual basis.
Okay.
Because this is like hazardous remediation they couldn't clean up because they weren't going to excavate the cellar.
And do you know that the system was installed?
Yes, because we had them install it and retest prior to issuing the resolution.
Okay.
And it was supposed to have, pressure sensors and alarms to go off. So
Okay.
I would like to know if that's functioning. And I'm not sure if that's part of this vacate order, but I assume it might be.
It sounds like it because it's for improper ventilation
Yeah.
of the cellar and first floor, and there was also a violation for some kind of gas piping that was not properly inspected. So it's very possible.
And they did work without a permit.
Yeah,
as
without
well.
a permit.
So
right.
that it's unclear whether they've ever gotten any of this really inspected to see
Right.
what they're doing. I mean, that was my big question: is what are the conditions that allowed them to reoccupy any portion of the building? It's not clear whether they had a vacate on the entire building or not. And then they didn't describe the work that's needed to fully lift their vacate. Mm-hmm. It could be, anything. They didn't show that they've, installed any of the windows that they were supposed to, or, any of that. And fire alarm, there's no sign off for that job. So, I'm not sure that they've really done anything that they were supposed to do.
Right. And so if you look at the violation history online, and as compared to what they initially submitted, there were like 37 ECB violations initially. And when you go online, I think there are only 10 left, but I see that some of them probably were cured either by self-certification filings or Directive 14 inspections. That doesn't make me feel comfy.
Right.
So I actually would like DOB and the fire department to do their own inspections, to make sure that we're
Seems like maybe
good
we should
here.
ask DEP to do an inspection
Yeah.
as well. Would
Right,
they be
also-
involved in those?
I visited this site yesterday, and they constructed a community facility, like, there's an empty lot that they use for
Yes.
recreation. Then they constructed another community facility, which has tons of violations in addition. And there's a catwalk.
That's what I think that the
There's a
stop work
catwalk.
order is.
Between
The
them.
school and the community
Yeah.
facility, and it's just, I don't think they learn.
No, they
I
don't.
think that was the stop, they have
And
a
I
stop
also
work
want to know
on
if
this
they
permit.
own the site to the right and what their plan, just how, it's just expanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the same organization.
Stay
Right.
tuned, they're coming in.
Yes, they're coming in for more.
action.
Oh, they
However,
are?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had pre-apps.
But it's true
Oh.
that they just continue to build without permits. That seems to be their method. And then they get caught, and then,
There's a vacate order on the community facility
yes,
there.
yes,
too.
because
I-
because you're not allowed to occupy a school in an M1 district. So how can you have a school?
It's a school.
Yeah.
It is another
It's
school.
It's a school.
another school.
Yeah, they've got that
They've
violation
owned that
from
and they're
2008,
coming
and it's
in.
like a two-story building, they gotta stop work on it, and I guess they also gotta vacate of that building,
Yes.
they were using the
Yes, they
building.
have some bulk problems with
So,
the building to the.
they built it without
to
a
the-
permit.
Their neighboring buildings.
'Cause that's a new
So
building.
they need to do some, there's a variance
Right.
request that has to go
Oh.
with that.
We need
And-
to work something
so-
out so that they
Okay.
stop.
So
So
doing
this is,
kind
we're
of
just
thing.
trying to take care of one,
All
sort
right,
of
so they
this
did come
first.
to us
And
for
then
that.
they'll be coming back for
Okay.
an
Yes,
amendment.
they came
and a-
for
and a
a
variance to-
pre-application.
So,
Because
Yeah.
presumably, they're going to probably have to have the same kind of conditions on that new structure that they have on this, right?
we can
And they've-
anticipate that, yes.
They've excavated, they've,
Yes.
yeah, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
More than, I mean, they built it, right? They built
Probably
it
without
under.
a phase two.
They built it without a
Certainly,
permit.
without a permit. No, I think they obtained a permit, but obviously
Right.
not for this use.
Yeah, they did attain a permit.
For the two-story building?
Yes.
Because
For
they
a
have a, they
community
have a
facility.
But for a
violation
community
for.
facility, but
Right.
it is not, it's not the generic community facility.
They're, because
that
they do
filed
have a
for.
violation for
Yes.
work without a
Without a
permit
permit.
on the 2008 new building that they
Yes.
have.
Yes.
Okay,
But
So,
that one has about like 28 violations.
yes,
Old bill.
Yes.
right.
Stay tuned.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
stay tuned. Well, so that's a question, they're not technically the same, they're not the same application and they're not the same building.
But they're connected. if
They're
But they
connected
are
by a
joined.
catwalk, but whether they're the same building by the definition of
Definition of
building
building.
is an
We may need
issue.
to ask them to.
Yeah, I think we actually need them to deal with that,
To
because
deal
if
with
it
that
is the
prior
same
to our
building,
permit.
then it can't be isolated in a certain way, right?
So can we ask them to explain
Yeah.
this scenario and that they're coming back?
Yeah, I
and
think we should,
we'll
yes.
Put that on the record.
Put that all on the record, yes.
It's not involved. Okay, so then there's more, let's see what else. So, let's see. Sorry, statement of facts. Also, they also just had this little conversation in the statement of facts about alternate means of ventilation, and I didn't really understand the purpose of that, except that it maybe was going to the
For the
subject
noise.
of for the noise. Well, they didn't put it into any kind of a context, right? So, because they also have a hazardous condition of, improper ventilation in the cellar, right? So maybe they were talking about alternate means to show that, look, we've done something to deal with the fact that it's not properly ventilated in the cellar, but they didn't explain why they bring this up, and I'm confused.
Well, they were supposed to have installed windows that, were of a certain.
That was for sound.
For
Yeah,
sound. So
right.
was it that those windows perhaps aren't operable? And
Well, they didn't install those windows, so that's the other thing.
Right.
So the other thing, so I'm jumping around a little bit, but the other thing is they were, according to the prior approval, they were obligated to install windows that would maintain an indoor 45 dBA requirement. They did not do that. we have a letter from DEP requiring that in order to consider the modification of the original condition, the DEP asks that the applicant provide a narrative explaining the reasoning for the request for reconsideration and how the applicant can meet the 45 dBA indoor requirement for schools, and also that it provide noise readings and levels showing how the applicant can meet the 45 dBA indoor requirement, and provide specs on the current windows. They said specs if available, but I know that all windows, even the kind that are produced kind of like in the home shops, they all have specs, so they should be provided. And then that also goes to the other thing that they were supposed to have done, which they never did. So DOT is requiring that they contact DOT to fulfill the school's safety requirements for site safety treatment in addition to DOT's safe route plan. That's normally supposed to be done 2 months before school opens, and it was never done. So those are requirements of those two agencies, which I totally agree need to be done. And then, let's see, the other question I had, they talk about how they have HUD-approved AC, air conditioning sleeves. I don't really understand how HUD-approved sleeves is relevant to a classroom. I mean, those are to make sure that they don't fall out onto the street, I think. But it's relevant to residential use. I don't really understand that. But when you look at the building, there's must be 200 air conditioners that are cut into the wall hanging in there. It seems like it would have been cheaper to centralize the AC system. And then, yeah, so the inspection on the gas service, really would like to know what's going on with that. Let's see. Oh, and just in terms of the kinds of things that were open violations that are terrifying: fire stopping, exposed wiring, unsafe, unsuitable electrical equipment, spalling concrete ceilings, sprinklers in unheated stairwells, so that means it's the fire system freezes in the wintertime. I'd like to know how those were actually handled. And also, there are significant open ECB penalties that are still owed. I'd like to know what the plan for that is. They need to be cleared before we come to a decision. And the ECB record needs to be clear of everything except the ones that say for requiring C of O. The other question I had, because it seems like it was resolved, it says there was an improper corridor width for egress, and that seems to have been resolved. How did you resolve an improper corridor width? It's supposed to be 66 inches for the units of egress, and if it's less, what did they agree to do? Also, there was a mention somewhere about trailers in the rear of the property. Did you see trailers on the site visit?
No.
I didn't see any.
Okay.
But I did see
On the adjacent site, the one underneath the catwalk, maybe?
No. To the right of the property, there's a tractor and a trailer, or there's a trailer parked on the sidewalk.
On the sidewalk.
Right, this big, huge trailer.
But was that there?
Trailer, I don't know. I would
Yeah.
like to know, because I think they own that site to the right now.
Yeah.
It was there when I saw it as well, so I'm not sure whether,
And
but I
it's
don't know
like,
whether
there's
it
no
belongs
truck,
to
it's
them.
been like just deposited on the sidewalk. What is it doing there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It could just be storage for something, but it shouldn't
But
be
you
on the
can't have it on the
sidewalk.
sidewalk,
No.
so, and you can't, I hope it's not for classrooms.
It didn't, no.
Wouldn't be the first time trailers were used for
No,
classrooms.
but those
It's not that
typically
kind
have,
of trailer.
yeah, really, those have windows, one hopes, so.
Yeah.
I didn't see windows.
One
on
would
this
hope.
one.
It's like more like
Also, I'd also like to know how the existing plans compare to the BSA approved plans under the special permit. The approved plans show that the level of the first floor is different from that at grade at the rear, and that there was a stair at the rear yard to receive egress. That isn't shown on the shown as constructed on the existing plans. On the other hand, there are two sets of approved plans, so I don't actually know which is the most recent. I just don't understand what's the legal egress from that rear stair? Because you're not allowed to go back through the same
No.
lobby as you had for the other stair. So it seems like it should be egressing to the rear yard, and then you go back around the sides. So I don't understand that one. And then, and I note with respect to that the 2012 second means of egress application was professionally self-certified. So that, again, doesn't give me great confidence. And was everything, and yeah, okay. And then there's a photograph that, and maybe you didn't see this, that there's all this trash in the front of the school. It seems like all the black plastic bags just pile up in front of the school, and that's how they deal with their trash.
That's what it looked like yesterday.
Yeah, that is not acceptable.
It's
Trash has to be
it-
stored in the building.
It obstructs the sidewalk.
Okay. So there must be a trash room in the building with proper containers on site. And if it's food trash, which it must be for this many children, it needs to be in a refrigerated room. No exceptions. And then we already went through the noise issues. Okay. Anything else?
For
This
me,
is very
that's enough.
disturbing. I really wish there was a way that we could communicate to this applicant that this is not the way that you do business. You file a permit, you file for permits, you file plans, you make sure the school is a safe school, you design it according to code, then you build it according to code.
Well,
Not after the
they
fact.
knew that after our original hearing,
Yeah.
because they had just opened the school and then came to us for a permit.
Right.
And that was,
Well, knowing something and doing
Told them
something.
to them,
rather
and
than
It was told to them. It's not that they know it, it's that they were told it. But I wish there was a way we could convince them that this is not the way to go. It puts the children at a huge risk. And, if you're gonna build something without a permit, at least build it according to code.
So it doesn't make it twice as bad.
Yeah, so you're not, for all that illegal occupancy time, the children are not in huge danger. Anyway, okay, on with the next.
Appeals calendar, item number 10, 300 08A, 3935 27th Street, Queens.
Okay, I think, if I remember correctly, this one, we're just really, the applicant's gonna come here with an update on where they are, but in terms of DOB and where they are, we have a note from DOB from September 29th, stating that the owner is being permitted to perform site safety work only, and that the best squad has been involved in safety structure and adjoining properties, which is really good because that's what we really wanted. And that DOB denied the applicant's request for an NB, a new building permit, and issued an intent to revoke the active NB permit that should never have been issued in the first place. And then the applicant provided us with a little status update letter, but they're gonna come tomorrow and update it further, because that was 2 weeks old, right?
Right.
But the Best Squad hasn't actually signed off on their site
Not
safety
to my
plan yet?
knowledge. Not to my knowledge, just a review, there's some discussion of minor changes, I think additional changes.
So maybe they could bring photos of the hoist actually in place, and, I mean, they've just told us that they've done it, and I don't think that I didn't see a DOB inspection that said that it had been done, so maybe
The
just
hoist
get a
place, because they
photo.
said they put in a new hoist.
Yeah, some things have been.
But since the best squad is on this, hopefully it means that the hoist is being inspected by the squad, right?
One would hope.
Yeah, okay. But we're in
Leave it at
contact, so we have like a direct contact about this application with DOB, so, I forget who it was who sent us this. Tony, do you remember? who sent-
Ben Helengus, he's Assistant General Counsel.
Okay, so they're on it. It's great that they're so on it. Okay. Next one.
New cases, item number 11, 31712A, 40-36 27th Street, Queens.
Okay, with this one, I just found that the timeline of the work was a bit confusing. I'm just a little confused about when the pile caps and grade beams actually were installed, since the permit, it seems like they were installed before there was a permit. The permit was issued in April of 2015, but in October of 2012 and February of 2014, there was an approval of the revised foundation plans. And in May 2014, there was a foundation contract. And the TR5 seems to indicate they were installed in November of 2014. So I'm kind of not getting it, that this was all done without a permit. I don't understand, unless that's just a renewal of a permit that had expired. It could be. It's just not clear. And then, and I'll let others speak down, just want to, then the loan amount, and this just goes to the timeline that's requested. The loan amount is for 3.6 million, and the construction cost is 11.4 million. Seems a little underfunded if we're going to move along, right? I don't really understand this kind of financing. Normally you get a commitment letter for the whole thing, but they're going to release the money in tranches, and then you're covered. And then the other thing that they're establishing the additional cost for the piles, but they provided checks to us, but actually the checks are from me to me. They're from 4040 Management, which is an owner, to ZH Levitt Management, or which is an owner. So how'd the pile contractor get the money?
Unless they're a pile contractor.
No, they're not. No, the pile contractor has a totally different name. So I don't get that. What I am getting in terms of partnerships is one is reimbursing the other for having laid out the money, but is there therefore no relationship anymore with 4040 Management or something? So 4040 won't come up with the checks it wrote to the pile guy? Explain that, because it's not unusual that you hate your partner and that's the end of it and they won't speak to you. So, okay. Anybody else on this one?
They could just reconcile their figures in terms of money spent between the statement of facts and findings and the cost breakdown. And also as to the serious loss, they could just address whether or not any of the previously expended money for reinforcing piles could be reused, as in, can the piles be reused? So it's an $800,000 figure that I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
The rest of it is fine and detailed, and I think it was following what was in the original resolution.
So in other words, would the piles have been necessary, or could they have been used for a smaller building?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and you wouldn't have maybe put them in for a smaller building?
Right, they could say
Right.
that all they have to do is just address it and,
Okay.
and say, so it would have been a waste of money, or if they have to alter the building in any way, they can't use any of it, so therefore all of that money's lost.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, yeah.
Decision items, zoning calendar decision items, item number 12, 17314 BZ, 20 East 38th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, they did as we requested. They submitted proof that the fire department approved fire alarm and sprinkler drawings of February 2014, and they put notes on the drawings to indicate that these have been installed. And I'm okay with this, but would just condition approval on ADA compliance as required by DOB, since we didn't get into that in detail. Anybody else?
Item number 13, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Item number 13, 26014 BZ, 100 East End Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay. With this one, the applicant was very responsive to the comments from the prior hearing and neighbors' comments about the bulk of the stair, the R8B, and they actually modified that staircase further from what they had done before, because they had dropped down the height. Now they pushed it back 23 feet 4 inches from 84th Street. So that's really great. It really reduces the impact of that stair on the neighbors. They also added a couple of proposals for conditions. One of them was, there was a lot of complaint about the noise that goes on in the construction site. So they have a proposal, which I think is a great idea, to insulate the sidewalk shed so that it reduces the noise that comes from the construction site. That should probably be required on all sites. It's really a good idea. And then in terms of some complaints from neighbors about the site being kind of messy around, I'd like to just add a condition that they should have their facilities manager, or whoever that is, who kind of manages how the site looks during the day, and make sure that construction workers are respectful of the neighbors' properties, and that the debris is restricted to the Chapin property and doesn't go onto the pedestrian way. I thought the EAS was very improved. and there were really good responses to the commentary, to opposition commentary. We did receive a lot of letters of opposition. In fact, they trickle in kind of constantly. But I thought that to the extent possible, because they're coming in so quickly, that the applicant was very responsive to their comments. And then another condition would be, which was volunteered by the applicant, that with respect to the roof, there be no sound amplification of any kind on the roof, lighting other than emergency lighting, and that the use of the roof would be sunrise to sunset. So I think that'll take care of the noise concerns. Anybody else on this? So I think the applicant's been very responsive. Thank you. Okay.
Item number 14, 27014BZ, 203 East 92nd Street, Manhattan. You weren't waiting for
Okay.
anything?
What?
We
Sorry?
weren't waiting for anything?
No, we're not waiting for anything. It's amazing. So they revised the drawing to indicate that the hung ceiling will have a soffit with insulation behind it, so that really kind of encapsulates that ceiling, so the occupant of the floor above won't be, let's say, hammered by weightlifters or whatever. So I'm okay. It's an occupant. It's not a super.
That's right. It could be any one of us.
Yes, right. When we need a different job, a super's job is a good job. Okay.
Have hammer with trouble.
If you can fix doorknobs and stuff. Okay.
Item number 15, 3315BZ, 5510 Broadway, the Bronx.
Okay, this one, they revised the plans to indicate the sound attenuation measures, so I think it's good now.
Item number 16, 6915BZ, 245 Page Avenue, Staten Island. We're going to defer this for notice problems.
Okay. There were
Yeah,
notice
they
problems.
didn't do the notice, so we're going to defer it to 1027.
Okay.
Continued hearing items. Item number 17, 9814BZ, 404 Richmond Terrace, Staten Island.
Okay. They provided plans for an as-of-right medical and revised the proposed drawings. They showed on the proposed as requested in the prior hearing relocation of the AC units to the parking lot side, because before it was right next to residential. They showed a permeable parking surface, the landscaping to buffer the parking, interior trash storage, and they did provide a note about keeping noise levels to 45 dBA and complying with New York City quiet law. The last page of the drawing show acoustical details for a floating floor and wall and ceiling treatments for the banquet hall only. I was looking at the drawings to see whether those acoustical details should really apply to other parts of the space, but I kind of didn't see where there would be people other than in the banquet hall. So, you know, they're coming into the lobby, but the lobby is sheltered from the perimeter of the building by other uses like the bathrooms and there's a small dining area, that kind of thing. So I think that kind of sound insulation on the banquet hall is probably enough.
Well, it looked to me that they were only putting it on the rear wall. I think they should put it on the side wall.
You know, what the problem is that the drawings, it was my first reaction, was the drawings don't key the details in. It just says, in the banquet hall, you know, these windows, this wall, this floating floor. It would be easier if they did it in the standard architectural way, where each detail has a number, and then they mark on the floor plan that this number is the detail for this part of the drawing. That would be the cleanest.
Well, on the, would be the west wall, it's just the blank, and it says existing wall to remain, and then on the rear wall, they show changes. So that's why I thought it
Well,
did.
maybe they just
key
need
it
to
in
make a
and-
note that says this is throughout, you know, the banquet hall.
All walls of the banquet hall and all
Well, at
floors and
least
ceiling.
the south wall and the west wall.
Right.
The other wall
Not
is
our
against
interior walls.
The other wall is against a multiple
Exterior
dwelling that
walls.
has no windows. And the front
So the
meets the other
banquet,
building.
the banquet here, and that's the back of the property, that's the front of the property. So the
Yes.
banquet room is this.
Right.
And this is the wall that's shared, it's
With the
like
parking
looks at
lot.
no, not the parking lot. No, the banquet hall is adjacent to
All right, that-
residential.
Okay,
So that, and has windows in it.
no, it doesn't. The multiple dwelling does not have windows
No,
in
not the
it.
multiple dwelling, the banquet hall
Oh,
wall
the
has
banquet
windows
hall
in
has
it.
windows, yeah.
And so it has windows here and at the rear. And I understood from the drawings that they're gonna be using some kind of quiet, I forget what the name of it is, it's got like a quiet treatment, which is an interior window to reduce the sound. Because these are landmark windows, so it's not like you can do it with the windows themselves, but to put a window on the interior or some kind of shield on the interior was what I understood from the drawing.
I think they should do the walls at the rear and the wall facing the parking lot. Because there's and I was concerned about the
Okay.
location, the new location of the air conditioning units because it's just a few feet from the residential window.
On the parking lot side, there,
Yes.
next to the resident? Okay.
Do they show any baffling? They don't show any baffling?
No,
for
they
the-
didn't, and I didn't see why they
For the
couldn't move the air conditioning units forward. Because that three-story brick building, which is right on the rear property line, it's very close to those AC units.
Okay, so we need them to clarify, we need to clarify with them specifically on drawings what we want to see.
Yes.
And then they need to modify the drawings to show that. And then if the AC units are, I understand in terms of the drop-offs and stuff like that, that the AC units are in a kind of a good place for that. So if they can baffle them with acoustical buffer, do you think that would be good
Well,
enough?
it's still, I think it might be a matter of like 4 or 5
Or
feet
just
from a
slide it
window.
down? Okay.
So if they could,
Let's see.
look into that.
Yeah, okay.
The other thing was, since they didn't give us an STC rating, I think we should just require a sound limiter on the noise system, on the amplification system, and limit it to, something reasonable, assuming that this mechanism they're gonna install, because they didn't hire a consultant yet, they just added some notes.
Yeah,
So that if it's going to be considered like 35 decibels or 40 decibel STC limitation, maybe they should be limited to, in order to reach the 45 dBAs, then they should be limited to maybe around 80 decibels interior
okay.
sound.
Had we determined whether they were going to use some sort of sound system
Yes.
to call the cars?
Oh, no, they said they were gonna
They're
use
going to
headphones.
use headphones,
Yeah.
right? So we just should make sure that that plan doesn't change.
Right. Okay, so we can make that a condition also, let's see.
And then they said they were going to put up a new 6-foot-high metal fence. But it wasn't clear to me, what is it, chain link? What are they
Okay, so
installing?
we need to design the whole things. Okay, so. Okay, and I also thought the planting type and the quantities also need to be specified, and I also thought that there should be planting if it's physically possible to get your body in there. That was the only thing. I wasn't sure whether a worker could actually get in the space between the side of the building and the property line to put in more buffering planting. There should be planting around the perimeter of the whole building, because all of that's adjacent to residential. But they may speak to whether that's physically doable. Like you do the planting through the windows. Or maybe it's
Put the
just,
water
you
through
have, you plant, literally, you put up a fence with vines, and then the vines grow, and then that becomes the buffering. Okay, what else?
The viability of the plants also might be. a
But
question.
vines-
Right,
Yeah,
vines do
might
great.
Be able to do
Yeah.
okay, but like.
Right, in fact, vines become almost a nuisance when they're in.
They don't have a whole lot of water.
That
Yeah.
east wall is sort of adjacent to, I think it's like a 6-story brick, multiple dwelling with no windows.
No windows,
Right,
okay.
So, I'm not
So
sure.
that one you're not concerned about
No.
so much, okay. And how about the rear, though? The rear is adjacent to residential.
Right.
So
The rear
maybe,
should-
the rear, they could get the
Yeah.
planting in there. It's as wide as 5 or 6 feet, I think. It's kind of a triangular shape
Right.
At least it's big enough for a person to be able to maintain.
to work, yeah.
Mhm.
And then, in terms of, I'll let Commissioner Otley Brown talk about this, but in terms of the as of right, they sort of ignored our repeated requests for looking at the property as multifamily. I don't know why, they just said, you know, you would never do it, but I don't know why you would never do it. In fact, we recently looked at something where it's a similar situation and they want to actually use the historic property as a multifamily. So to say that it's not something that's viable, I actually don't get that. They did, though, provide actual construction costs based on the plans, which was good. And maybe...
I actually find the report to be problematic, and there still have to be quite a few adjustments made if this is really going to meet the B finding. They have to make changes in the area of the site value and how it's calculated, and they have to make changes in the area of the project value and how that's calculated. As to the site value, as of the last meeting that we had, I had requested that they lower the price per square foot that was being used to match the average sales price per square foot of land. And the difference was about $4 a square foot, but it made a difference in the site value. Instead, what they did is they increased the site value by adding new 2014 comparables from different zoning districts located in far better neighborhoods without making any adjustments. That raised the site value to $45 to $48 a square foot from $27 a square foot in the previous report. They also didn't value the land according to the zoning. This is a split lot that's R5 land and R3A land, but they didn't value the land separately for each zoning. They just piled it all together and valued it as if it was one zoning district. As a result, the site value actually came in at its highest level since the beginning. The first report, the site value was 1.336 million. Now the site value is 1.445 million. When it came to the project value and how it was calculated, we had a conversation in the previous hearing about the retail rents and trying to find suitable retail comparables that would reflect being located within a landmark building, which was a specialty building. They said that it would be kind of difficult to find another landmark building, and then we pushed back and said, well, we want to see premium retail sites. What we got back was they totally discarded the hunt for any kind of retail that would be comparable, and they decided that while they were going to calculate the project value of the medical facility using medical leases and then capitalizing that value, they would calculate this proposed project by looking at other sites that were originally used for something else, purchasing that site, making some sort of renovation to convert that site into a catering and banquet hall.
Using the same cost
Using the
as
exact
this building.
same cost.
Yeah.
And that's problematic on a whole nother list of levels because it raised a whole bunch of questions that they didn't address, which why would you choose these sites? What would be needed to convert these sites? What would be the cost for each one to make the conversion? And so they made it far more complicated than it had to be. All they had to do was adjust the retail rents upwards to assume a premium space. And I had problems with the construction costs because I'm not an architect or an engineer. So when I had asked them to give us more detail as to what was being done for the proposed versus the as of right to justify the different construction costs of 1 million versus 2 million, I thought I would get more of a narrative that would tie in all the different items that would have to be done in each scenario. But instead we got two very long detailed lists of construction costs and no narrative to tie that into the report. So you have two listings of things like 2 patio doors, 3 bathroom doors, you know, patchwork. And I'm not an architect. I can't put that together to know whether they're actually assuming the right amount of work that has to be done and pricing it accordingly. So somebody needs to kind of convert that into a language that the average layperson can understand to really make the judgment call that, okay, you properly examined this and valued it properly.
You're hardly the average
Yeah.
layperson, excuse me.
Right, but I'm not an architect. I can't put together 20 sheets of 5 doorknobs and, 6 window jambs and figure out, okay, this is right.
Right. I have a question though about that, because I read that too, and I was kind of like, they did what? And then I thought, well, then isn't that the actual acquisition cost for the banquet facility? Because that's what they were saying. Well, we could buy another banquet facility over here, so why isn't that then the acquisition price for this building, right?
Well, it in terms of the cost, it should be part of the acquisition cost of that new way of looking at what the project value is. I think it just needs to be cast out.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
agree.
that you can do anything to that methodology except abandon it. Because even if they got it right, you still have a situation where you have apples and oranges, where you
Right.
have the as-of-right valued one way and you have the proposed valued a different way, and it's impossible to make comparisons and to analyze the situation.
When we have hotel applications, or let's say when we have residential applications compared to an as-of-right hotel, the hotel isn't like the rental of the hotel, it's the operation of the hotel, right?
Right, but it still drills down to a net operating income that you're capitalizing in the same way that you would do it if you had a residential rental. So it's still using a similar format. Yes, there are different sources of income for a hotel and different sources of expenses, and they have to be deducted in a certain way, but you're still using a capitalization method for both so that you can compare. This is not using
Right.
that. This is some sort of a purchase, conversion, and then assigning a value to it, and the value is not vetted properly, and that's the problem. There's no way to know whether what they're talking about is even accurate.
Well, why couldn't this be done the way a hotel's done for the banquet facility? Why couldn't you say, I'm an owner-operator, like I would be for the hotel, an owner-operator, and banquet facilities have this kind of rental a month for renting out the space for parties, this kind of expenses for staff and for maintenance and all
That
that
would
stuff.
be, to me, really complicating it. A hotel analysis is very complicated because it is an owner-operated business, in that what you have to do is you have to take the income for the business, and then you have to start subtracting out expenses that are business expenses, and then you have to start subtracting out expenses that are expenses to the real estate, so that what you remain with is income that's solely for the real estate. And I think that it's a complicated way of looking at an analysis, one of the more complicated ones, and I think that it's much easier and clearer if you can just figure out what it would be if you could just lease the space to a retail operator regardless. I think that we should try and be as simple and clear and transparent as possible, so that should anybody look at this 10 years down the line, they'll easily be able to see why we granted this variance and what the hardship actually was.
So it's a simple high-end retail, right?
Yeah, and really high-end, just to account for the fact that this is located in a landmark building that's going to be prime real estate. It's not just your ordinary, bricks and mortar, one-story, basic rectangle. No, it's nicely finished, and it's going to be nicely finished.
Okay, great. Anybody else on this? Nope. We do need LPC sign-off, though, on the final version, so that may hold us up a little bit. I don't know, so the applicant really needs to be working with LPC at the same time? Okay. Next.
Item number 18, 3215 BZ, 2847 West 8th Street, Brooklyn. It's a Blink Fitness.
Okay, with this one, at the prior hearing, we requested proof of fire alarm and sprinkler installation with photos. As far as I can tell, these were not submitted. Copies of the fire department's July 15th inspection were submitted, and of the self-certified sprinkler inspection were also submitted. We need the fire department to look at those submissions and determine whether they think that's satisfactory. The cover letter indicates also that sound attenuation is proposed to be installed. I'm not sure how you do that kind of after the fact without checking the place. And there was a comment that all the Blink Fitnesses get that treatment, so maybe that was a mistake. Maybe it's already in. I didn't understand that exactly, because we had another Blink Fitness, and that's exactly the same detailing and all that, so maybe that's an error. I'd like to clarify that. They also provided a ZRD one showing that DOB signed off that there's no need for additional parking. So other than fire department sign off on this and clarification on the sound, I'm good.
I just had the question about the fire department, whether
Yeah.
it's not done.
Okay.
New cases, item number 1, 33013BZ, 2801 Brown Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, so, there's two kind of critical initial questions on this 73622. The first one is, was this a tear down? This is a house that was lifted. So how, was it lifted, or is it new construction above a level? So we need clarification on that they retained existing floor area. The other thing that's really super thresholdy is the Sanborn maps that they provided that go through 2007 show that on this site there had been a small rear yard with a small extension. The current survey shows that the house is built full to the rear lot line. The drawings, the proposed drawings confirm, because they use a hatch, that this is both a request for more floor area and a waiver of the rear yard and side yard requirements, though the statement of facts just talks about it as a floor area waiver. With respect to the rear yard, unfortunately, because this is a very shallow lot, it couldn't possibly have a 20-foot or a 30-foot rear yard in the first place. It just couldn't fit the house, right? But we don't have the authority to waive a less than a 20-foot rear yard. So I don't know how we'd handle this application. It sounds like it would make a reasonable variance application.
Or possibly a waiver under the 64, this is in the floodplain, so they could they could use that special permit.
Okay.
The-
I didn't
the
look
back
at it in
ones.
detail.
Yeah, they may be able to do that.
Okay,
We haven't,
need to look at
just
that.
that occurred to me last night.
Okay. There's also, and as long as we're at it, I was confused about some of the questions about the existing conditions. There's a lot of inconsistency internally in the whole application. So it's either an existing condition of 0.71 or 0.93 or 0.84 FAR. I don't know, pick one. I just have no idea. The zoning calculations on the plans don't make it any clearer. It's proposed to be 969 square feet or 1,112 square feet. I don't know.
Or 1,162 square feet.
Oh, she found another
Yeah.
one. Okay, good. And then the proposed plans are very strange, but I figured out why they're so strange. The rooms are labeled closet when they're obviously bedrooms, but that's because you don't have legal light and air. Oops.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do about that. We have the authority to waive multiple dwelling law, but I don't
This
know
isn't
about
multiple
light and
dwelling.
air in a
not a
single family
This is
house.
not a multiple
Not a
dwelling.
multiple dwelling, so I don't know that we have the authority to waive.
It's a chamber.
Yeah,
It's a chamber.
it's a chamber.
It's a chamber.
So there's so many layers of difficulty with this. Then I noticed they did these really nice AXO envelope drawings, the wire diagrams, but they left out that little stair tower. Wondering, does it penetrate that envelope? I think it does. I think it does too, and I was like, maybe it's, yeah. So I don't know that that's a permitted obstruction. I don't think there is such a thing as a permitted obstruction in the envelope. And then I know that they've made some changes on their ground floor, which used to be fully enclosed and now has these holes cut out in it to make them flood openings. But looks like they'll eventually close them right back up and then occupy. I don't know. Anyway, so we need to make sure that.
We're removing the door that is there.
Yeah, there's the
So
door.
that's supposed to be removed. That'll
Yeah.
be conditioned.
But at the moment, they're storing materials in there, and so, et cetera. Yeah, So this application has a million problems, and it's really unfortunate because it's also been here forever. And I don't know why. It seems like it was submitted like 2 years ago, and they were responding back and forth to things.
There's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, and I don't really understand because it wasn't our thing. I don't know why it kept coming back and forth, but it's really a mess. So I'd suggest that the architect take a very, very close look at all of the regulations, including what those rooms are labeled closet, because I don't know how DOB would actually look at those rooms and say, oh, they look like nice, really nice walk-in closets with an ensuite bathroom.
It's one big closet.
Yeah.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. The approved plans show the building is going to be installed on concrete tiles with concrete masonry walls in the cellar. In the front, and then the sides are going to be all lattice. But what they actually look like they did from giving us the photos of the cellar is that the cellar seems to be constructed of wooden studs with an EIFS coating. And I'm not sure, to my knowledge, this does not comply with Appendix G.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm thinking
okay.
that the entire foundation of the building may not be compliant with Appendix G.
There.
And, let's see, what else? Oh, the front and side yards on the plans don't conform to the survey. And plus, I wasn't sure if the electrical system was above the base flood elevation. It didn't look like it. It looked like the meter was below. So I'm not sure what they did.
I have to agree with Commissioner Martinez. I was very confused by a lot of the information on the drawings. Could they please provide true existing dimensions on their existing plot plan? That would be helpful. And make sure that all sort of ancillary spaces like steps and any terracing there's a note that says to be approved by DOB. They miss out on that. And I was not convinced by their showing of pre-existing non-compliances.
Right.
So I think they need to kind of dig a little bit deeper and see if they can find some evidence of
Like?
I
Like
don't know.
what? They have Sanborn maps that say the building was X, as were all the other buildings on the block, with a rear yard, with a little tiny extension, and that's the thing that's so confusing. Their existing plans show like, oh, it's always been built full to the lot, and then the drawings submitted as the proposed admit that there's that rear yard addition. So
It's like, where did it come from and why is it?
that's because it wasn't there in 2007 and it's there now.
And explain more clearly how they're transferring floor area from the first floor and the mezzanine. I didn't understand that conversation.
Yeah, I think they shouldn't have discussed that at all because they effectively added another floor.
Yeah.
And then it's a double height space into the living room, and it's not really a mezzanine, it's,
Right.
you know.
It's
So,
floor area.
Yeah,
More floor area than they should have.
right. But it's a tiny house, so if this weren't so plagued with so many problems, you could say, okay, what are you supposed to do? There's sort of nowhere to live in this little thing. So it's a sympathetic problem, but this is, I unfortunately don't think this is the special permit to cure the problem. Yeah, okay.
Item number 2, 14914BZ, 3173 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, so this one, they submitted all the necessary material, and I thought because they're requesting a 20-foot rear yard on 2 floors, I thought that the rear yard study makes a great case for a 26-foot rear yard at the upper story and a 20-foot rear yard at the first floor, but not a 20-foot rear yard upper story based on the neighboring adjacencies. The streetscape images, though, show that the building massing is, I think, otherwise in line with neighboring buildings. Anybody else? Comment?
I was confused about their side yards. the statement and the zoning analysis say different things. And I think he should really confirm what the side yards he's proposing are. He has a bay window shown on the site plans, but it's not on the
Yeah.
floor plans. I think he needs to correct the floor area calculations for the attic because it doesn't agree with what he says on the site plan for the attic floor area.
He's devoted a lot of space up there to the attic.
Yeah.
I would think that he'd be able to pull that back apropos to what you were saying.
And
It was
then
very large.
the front yard landscaping, I don't see how it complies. I think the proposed porch is too big, and he did a title search to apply the narrow lot application, but he didn't do, he missed 2 lots in terms of the title search.
Oh.
A lot to the rear, and one of the lots to the side.
Okay.
And doesn't he have to be beyond the front yard line at least 18 feet for
parking.
his parking? It doesn't appear that he is.
And there are 2
And he's
yes.
only got a 6-foot side yard, so I'm not sure that he's even able to make the width. Is there I don't think there's a shared driveway there, so. And I don't know, I couldn't read the Sanborn. It was pretty illegible to me. Maybe it was just my old eyes, but if there's a way to clarify that.
Well, it was that the Sanborn doesn't have a dimension on it, so you can't tell about the pre-existing.
No.
Yeah.
But I think also it was just fuzzy, and I don't know whether that was the way it got uploaded or what, but for me it was very fuzzy.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah.
I didn't see the, in the rear yard study, the heights of the structures that penetrate the 30-foot rear yards. Was
No,
there?
they weren't. I'm
'Cause if he-
assuming always they're one-story garages, and then there were photos that showed.
Right, so,
Yeah.
yeah, to me, if he wants to make that case for the 20-foot rear yard on more than just the first floor, he really needs to add the heights of the structures that penetrate in the study.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Item number 3, 32314 BC, 282 Corbin Place, Brooklyn.
Okay, so this one, the only request here is for an increase in floor area to 2.65 FAR or 0.5 is FAR. And then unless I'm missing something, and I really did scour it, statement of facts has an incorrect statement. 0.5 and not 0.6 FAR is the maximum permitted in R31. This is not a lower density growth management area. The land use study confusingly also compares, that's why I always get a little confused about these land use studies when it gives you more information than you actually need to make your case, and it's not good information. So the land use study confusingly compares the proposal to buildings with 0.75 to 1 FAR. But the ask is only 0.65, so why wouldn't you pick ones that are 0.65 or around there, So to help the applicant out a little bit, there are 4 buildings on Corbin Place with greater than 0.65 FAR, so then that helps us get there, because there are not that many with 0.75 FAR. Also, a front yard map was provided. I'm assuming that the reason for that is because there's a proposal to reduce the front yard to 15 feet, which is allowable, even though, however, all the neighbors have 20-foot front yards. So, but there's no discussion about that in the statement of facts. It doesn't even make reference to this map. So this is like trying to figure it out, because you just read the stuff and you say, why is that there? I don't know, it must be this, right? So, but then, having looked at that, there is a continuity of these 20-foot front yards, and even though 15 is allowable, you do have that continuity. But then I looked at the floor plan, and I'm like, well, the building is being gutted, so why can't you just shift the whole story back a little bit? You've got a very deep rear yard, so why can't it just be shifted back 5 feet so the whole thing occurs after the 20-foot point? I couldn't figure any reason out at all. I looked to see if a staircase was being retained. It's not. It's a total gut. So I'd like to hear from the architect about that. Also, just the statement of facts has an error. It's not a one-family existing home, it's two-family, because there's, you see, two living rooms, two kitchens. And also, I was excited to see a rendering, but it was pretty much illegible in the electronic version. I don't know if anybody else saw a bigger one. So please bring a clean version, because renderings are expensive, so at least we should get to see them. But in the dark haze of the rendering, I could see that it makes the building look much taller than the adjacent house. So I'm curious whether it's really an accurate depiction of the proposal, since it's only supposed to be 2 feet taller than the neighbor, and it looks like it's 6 feet taller than the neighbor. So even the community board commented on the height, that it should be looked at. So
They should tell us, sorry.
go ahead.
Could they tell us what exactly is happening in the rear yard? Does that rear yard extend out past the gate? They have currently they've got this gate that goes to somewhere from the
looks
rear
like a
yard.
beach.
I think it's the beach.
Yeah,
But they
right.
should- But in their new plan, they don't show that they have got a gate in that wall. They also show a concrete wall that's existing, and they don't say that they're removing it. Can they tell us the height of that wall to make sure that it conforms, which would be great.
Okay.
And I too had a question, why would you break the street line when you had enough space, especially if you've got the beach behind you, that's not gonna get built on? Why would you break that line up? I think it's important, because there really is a strong
Yeah.
front yard context on that block.
Maybe because they want to keep their garage.
Could be. And also on their elevation, their front elevation, you would see that two-story portion in the back on that front elevation. They just sort of leave it off. It's not even ghosted in. But they show it from the rear, on the rear elevation, but I think you were going to notice, you're going to see it from the front.
Right.
So
from
it's
the
so it
beach
kind
side.
of makes the house not look as big, in a sense. So I'd like them to, at least if it's beyond what they think is really the plane of what you would see, it should be probably ghosted in some way, so that you recognize that it's there in the perception. Sorry, I'm
Okay, so this is in a flood zone, so they should really be measuring things from the flood-resistant construction elevation instead of grade. So it would reduce their building height in numbers, and also their perimeter wall height, which appears to be non-complying at 23 feet. So if they use the flood-resistant construction elevation, they'll be okay. I don't think they're counting all their attic floor area above 5 feet. And there's 2 rear covered balconies on the first and second floors. And I wanted to know if they're counting them as floor area.
2 rear covered balconies. Okay.
Yeah.
Which probably should have a DOB note too, as
Yeah.
well,
Uh-huh.
to be approved at DOB.
Okay. Okay. But just because they're covered doesn't make them floor area. It's if it's more than 50% of the
Enclosed,
right?
correct.
Right.
So they need a balustrade or something that would come up and be relatively opaque.
Yeah.
Something like that.
In order to make it floor area.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay. You'll have to explain to them what you mean about the ghosting, because I didn't totally get that, but that's okay. At the hearing, you can...
There should be some indication. Ghosting means that instead of, it being sort of at 100% in terms of gradation, you'd see it at 50%.
Right,
so that
it's,
you
what I
know
didn't
that
understand is
it's-
what you want ghosted.
Oh, they've got a rear portion that's more than its 2 stories, and they don't really show, they show it on their rear elevation, but I
not-
think it's probably visible from the front as
Oh,
well.
I see, okay.
So it should be in some way
Should show, okay.
demonstrated.
Okay. Okay. Good. Anything else? No.
Item number 4, 4315BZ, 2617 Avenue R, Brooklyn.
Okay, this proposal is for .68 FAR. And again, sort of to help the applicant decide with what kind of data you should give us to make your argument. The streetscape that describes what I've learned is now called the social block. Not now, it's probably been called a social block since like the 1940s or something in urban planning language. That's two sides, either side of Avenue R in this case. That's the experienced block. Shows 15 houses out of 28 with FARs greater than 0.61, including 5 greater than 0.68, as opposed to the study that talks about 0.75 and 1 FAR, because this is a request for 0.68 FAR. Similarly, in terms of arguments, the statement of facts argument in favor of the rear yard reduction isn't bad, but it misses some important points to support the idea, for me, that the interior donut, that's the interior open space, can support the reduced rear yard. 1, the site backs onto the side yard of the adjoining property, hence is not within the donut. 2, the property adjacent to it has frontage on 27th Street and also backs onto the side yard behind it, so it's not within the donut, plus it enjoys full street frontage on 2 sides because it's a corner lot. 3, the property to the other side of the subject backs onto the full long block depth, because this is on the short side of the block, the full long block depth of the donut, so will not lose its participation in the open space that may be caused by a 5-foot reduction in the required rear yard, which is what they're asking for. However, given that there are closets and a bathroom at the rear of the second floor, I'm wondering whether the roof line at the second floor could be reduced, because you don't need the full ceiling height for a closet or for a bathroom, so that the portion at the rear on the second floor wouldn't have the same impact on the rear yard at that level. We've seen that done where they slope the roof back significantly, so it's effectively pulled back. And then in spite of all, so it's a little confusing to me, because I do think that there's a good argument for what's been requested, more or less, except for that upper portion of the rear, upper portion of the rear. The community board approved this application by a split decision, and there were letters to both them and to us in opposition commenting on the size of the project. So it's, something's up.
They also have a stop work order.
Yes, there was because
it says a full stop work order because of a full gut renovation.
Yeah, you can see from the photographs, they pulled off the little back extension.
They did.
Yeah, and
so they should make that clear, perhaps.
Yeah, no, actually, they admitted it. You know, they said we admit, because the community board apparently, that may be the reason for the split decision, and that would be useful if the applicant would explain that.
Exactly.
Is the community board might have been angry that they were working without a permit, and sometimes that's how they, wrap the knuckles.
Well, yeah, no, I think that they could have brought that out a little bit more, because my question then was, is this a true representation? What we're seeing, is it a true representation of what's actually there now? So they need to, for me, they will need to sort of explain themselves in that regard. Show that the stated existing floor area is 1,352 square feet. Is that true now, or is it true before? Could they give us, show us the legality of the perimeter wall at 21.8? I know they say they're trying to match up with their adjacent perimeter wall, but they don't actually give us any indication that that's what the perimeter wall is. An applicant merely states that the house fits into the neighborhood character. Provide some better analysis of that. And it would be helpful maybe if they put some dates on their photos when those were actually taken. So that was it for me.
I'd like them to give us a survey of the site. To me, the existing and proposed side yards look the same, but on their zoning analysis, they're saying they're different. And on the proposed plan, there's a full second floor, but when you look at the site plan, it says it's only 1 story at the rear, adjacent to the garage. They're missing something.
Is
But
this the
the-
one where there's little infill boxes, one story here,
Yeah,
two
it says
stories
it's a
there?
proposed one-story on the
Right.
site plan, but then when you go to the floor plan, it
built
shows it's built out.
in. Yeah.
It's a
okay.
closet, actually, but still, that I didn't understand. And the landscaping, they have this huge porch, it doesn't look like it's gonna comply with the landscaping. So they gave us some calculations. And they just make a comment that the perimeter wall of the adjacent building is X, but they don't say how they measured this. They
Right.
don't verify it.
That's what Commissioner Henson said,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, okay, proof of the perimeter wall height, okay. Okay. Anybody else? No? Cool. That's it?
Good, thank you. And the battery's dying.
Yeah, just in
The
time.
battery's dying.
You done?
Say this ends the review session? Sorry, this ends the review session.
Sorry, too late.